conversation with Israel about exactly that.
Mr. Secretary, your national security memorandum that you signed says Israeli civilian harm mitigation efforts are, quote, inconsistent, ineffective, and inadequate. The prime minister himself said Israel assesses the IDF killed 14,000 terrorists and 16,000 civilians. Does the U.S. share the Israeli assessment that more civilians have been killed than actual terrorists?
Yes, we do. And I think the report makes clear that while Israel has processes, procedures, rules, regulations to try to minimize civilian harm, given the impact that this operation, this war in Gaza has had on the civilian population.
And yet you're still surging weapons to Israel.
Those have not been applied consistently and effectively. There's a gap between the stated intent and some of the results we've seen. But because it's so complicated, in the midst of a war, and particularly in the midst of a war where you have an enemy that hides in civilian infrastructure, hides behind civilians, to make final determinations on these individual incidents. We're looking at the totality of what's happened. We think it's reasonable to assess, based on what's happened, that there have been acts that have been inconsistent with Israel's obligations under international humanitarian law, but we haven't drawn definitive conclusions. We need to pursue these investigations, just as Israel is doing itself.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for your time this morning.
Thanks, Margaret.